Hey everybody, this is Perch. Let's get right into it here. Where's the competition? Reads this email, and I have a lot of thoughts about this, but let's see if the emailer is going in the same direction that I would. It says Perch. When did everyone become a pussy? In my mind, that was mid '90s. It's one of the reasons why the '90s is less. I'm less fond of it. So, Gen X kind of went into the '90s aggressive and watched as everything fell apart underneath us. That's in my view. That's what happened. Right about the time Kurt Cobain died, it was right after that. That was it. Anyway, um, I'm guessing like 1995. That's when everyone became a pussy. All right. We used to have great rivalries, says email. WCW versus WWF, Marvel versus DC, etc. Now it seems like no one cares. I even watched a video about the PlayStation versus Xbox console wars, and no one seemed to care if Xbox were to go out of business. They just enjoy being able to play whatever game they want on whatever console they own. PlayStation being the only console in the world means they can put whatever crappy game they want out, and people will have to buy it if they want to play games at all. I remember back in the day when one of the Nintendo executives and one of the Sega executives almost got into a fist fight over their companies. Yeah, that E3 was a wild con. I used to love that con, but crazy shit would go on down there. That was the mean streets of LA during kind of the late '90s and the early 2000s. Anyway, whatever. We need competition in order for companies to continue to strive and make great products for fear of being beaten out by their competitors. The reason for the pussification of everything is when you give participation trophies out for just being in the workplace. Yeah, I mean that's everybody on we don't keep score for the soccer game. We just hand everybody a trophy. The funny thing though is I think people remember that a little wrong. That's into the mail, by the way. Thank you. There's this idea that somewhere in the '90s again, parents were just like taking kids out. They're like, we're not keeping score, and we're going to teach these kids not to compete. And I'm sure that happened. I'm not denying it did. But if you think that children are not competitive by nature, you're crazy. These are the parents trying to feel good about what they're doing. But kids by their nature do want to win. It's boiled into them. That's why you see kids throw just complete tantrums when they don't, when they get beat at things, which in a weird, sick way is healthy. But um, so so I'm going to relate this to comic books, but I think you opened up a bunch of other media there, and I do think it's true. But actually, the WWE or WWF, I should say, we'll go old school, purchasing WCW. That's kind of the answer there. What happened was you had a lot of companies that took the either purchase their way and somebody won. Basically, they had a competition and one of them won, and they in effect swallowed up the other. Or you see what happens is the costs and the money get kind of so out of whack that it just it doesn't make sense to compete in the same way again. A lot of that's what happened with the game consoles. Today because of the release and the timing and some of the botched ways they did exclusivity, and another day I can be happy to go in on all that. You had people buying multiple consoles, and as soon as they started buying multiple consoles, then the idea of being a Nintendo purist or a Sony purist kind of went out the window, and here we are. You just don't have that kind of heat. With comic books, I mean, for one thing, the rivalry. So the last time I remember there being a decent rivalry and some people talking shit about each other was during the New 52. And DC, for a period of time, started outselling Marvel pretty aggressively in the New 52, and then it tanked. They didn't hold it. But during that time period, um, Marvel basically looked at it as, what do we need to do to get back on top? And it became a lot less about putting out, strong books and kind of winning that way in the marketplace. And it became a lot more about how do we stuff the shelves? How do we do more relaunches? How do we do more variant covers? How do we get the sales that way? Now, keep in mind, business is business. And so, Marvel was competing for dollars, which is what, as a company, you need to do. But from a fan perspective, from the people reading the comics, it kind of pacified everything during that time period. You just didn't see the creators. I mean, it didn't help that You had summits between, editor in chiefs, and you had creators bouncing back and forth between both companies, and the whole idea of exclusivity became kind of a joke as opposed to taking something away from the other person. Exclusivity is all about restricting something popular, something good, to one brand or one platform. In the case of comics, you have people who are exclusive Marvel creators, and that would be a big deal if the creators that were getting the exclusivity mattered. And that's a harsh way of saying it, but and I'm sorry to pick on her because the internet picks on her all the time, but like Teenie Howard gets a Marvel exclusive deal, and it's like, nobody's clamoring for Teenie Howard as a customer, as a fan. Now, Marvel certainly can say, "Hey, there's money in them hills." Actually, she's kind of flat. But anyway, they could certainly say, there's long term value there, so we want to ride that upswing with her. And I'm sure there are plenty of people at Marvel who's like, "I want to ride Teenie Howard." I'm sure that was going on. But what happened was, because there was no real fan interest in Teenie from a major standpoint, the exclusivity felt pointless. It just, who cares that she's exclusive? Where if you go back, 10, 20 years, and you have like John Byrne is exclusive to Marvel, well, that was a big deal because he was a big name, and him, the exclusivity running out and him going over to DC was a big deal. Like, that felt like kind of a seismic shift in creatives. But when you're handing out exclusivity to not your top people, then doesn't matter. So that was a big knock against this feeling of competition. For what it's worth, and I think you could take wrestling as an example. During the Monday Night Wars period of WCW and WWE, it was the ratings were really high. Business was great. Competition made those shows feel like must-watch shows. Now, by the way, if you ever go back and you watch some of those shows, they aged terribly. A lot of the shows were awful, but there was a sense of I can't miss it, and there was a sense of the two companies were trying to one up each other, and you were getting just kind of crazy marketing stunts and big content, and it helped. With comic books, I mean, honestly, what is the big thing that DC is doing and Marvel is doing where there really is a feeling of them trying to compete? I mean, I'll give you an example. You have the Absolute Universe and you have the Ultimate Universe. Both, Marvel's Ultimate Universe had a few months head start on it, but both of those universes should generate a feeling of real competition. They don't. I in both cases, there's not a must-read feeling on any of those titles, and that's not a knock against what, Hickman's doing with Spider-Man or Snyder's doing with Batman. It's just there's not a, I have to read this right now or I'm going to be spoiled, and oh, I'll bet Snyder's going to pull out the stops because he wants to, knock Hickman off the sales charts. There's no feeling of that kind of pressure, and that's that so yeah, there is no competition. That would be a natural one. An imprint of a new universe where the characters get to kind of do brand new things with new takes on things. I mean, yeah. What do you like? Do you like how Snyder, reimagined Bane, or do you like how Hickman reimagined Mysterio? That should be a good, solid debate in comic shops, but we're so far washed and removed from a feeling of competitiveness that I mean, does anybody care? I went to the Dallas Fan Expo, and what I was surprised by is there were very few to zero conversations that that naturally should have occurred. And it could even work for creators working on both titles. By the way, you can have Philip Kennedy Johnson. Who's better, Philip Kennedy Johnson's Superman or Philip Kennedy Johnson's Hulk? Why shouldn't Marvel and DC lean into that a little bit? They don't have him under an exclusive, so why don't both companies kind of start to kind of push on, we've got the real must read, PKJ title on in our company, so screw that other one. I don't know if the creator would appreciate that, but that's the kind of stuff that needs to happen. We need that to occur in order to have that feeling of danger. So I- you know when so but I mean, quite bluntly, the people in comics, this is going to be a crazy, this could be a crazy comment, but honestly, I feel it's true. The only feeling of competition that I feel in comics these days is either the big two against fans, and the example I'll give you is, fans want MJ and Peter to be back together. Nick Lowe and Tom Brevoort and the various editorial offices are dead set against it and mock the fans for wanting it. That feels like the biggest competition of who's going to win that fight. And then the other competition that's going on is, frankly, competition where it shouldn't be. And that's on the indie scene, where you've got, first time creators like taking, not just shots at each other over the content, but like wild shots over, somebody's weight or somebody's intelligence or somebody's, involved in incest, or you read, like, the indie comic scene is a freaking mess of unhealthy competition. Where would be the competition of, hey, the character in my comic book's better than the character in your comic book? Well, I mean, more comic books would have to ship in order for, I guess, that competition to really kind of happen. But that's the competition we need on the indie scene. And frankly, on the major comic scene, the competition needs to not be between the companies and the customers. It needs to be between the companies. We need a good rivalry. We need somebody out there. I mean, come on, Jed McKay. Is Jed McKay still a Marvel exclusive? I think he might be. Come on, Jed. It's time for you to just talk some shit about DC. Just go at it. I mean, be that obnoxious dick and just talk about how crappy their comics are. Scott's not going to do it. He's a nice guy, but I mean, why not? Like, where's Kelly Thompson for the Wonder Woman book, basically throwing her Marvel contract in a garbage bin and saying, that company sucks. Like even if it's all, faked, even if it's all kayfabe, then let's see it. I think that would be healthy. You need to give the readers a feeling like, true competition. Our characters, our art, our stuff, our comics are must read. Those comics you can pick up in trade, like get it going. But too much kind of benign, passiveness in this industry. It's not healthy for sales. It doesn't help anything. Anyway, what do you think? More competition? How would you do it? Where would it come from? Let me know in the comments below. Like and subscribe, and thanks for listening.